Hello, hello. All right. Hey guys, this is Jackie from Jackie Sweet Shapes. We are about to do an advanced fall themed class. So I'm just waiting for people to pop on. We have a few people taking the class. It starts in about 10 minutes. So if you're scrolling through Facebook and you see this, hello. We are not starting for about 10 minutes, but it's going to be a virtual class. So I have shipped out little cookie kits to people, and then they're going to pop on and take the class. Make sure. So you can head to my website if you want to see all of my upcoming classes that I have. I'm going to be doing one in October, one in November, and one in December. So I'm just waiting for people to come on. Nobody's on yet. Saturday afternoon. All right. Oh yay, one person just came on. 2 people, yay! Hey. So I cannot see anybody, so if you're here for the class, the virtual class, and you have your cookie kit with you, say hi, comment, tell me that you're here. If you are not taking the class and you're just scrolling through Facebook, hello, I'm about to do a cookie class in about 10 minutes, so you can stick around or you can come back later because we're going to be here for about 2.5 hours. So, but if you are taking the class, tell me hi, I want to see who you are, see if you're here for the class. All right. So 10 more minutes. I'm gonna make sure that I am on here. Let's see. Hey, so one more person just popped on. We're about to do a virtual class. If you're taking the class, comment, let me know that you're here. Say hi, because I can't see until you post, and then I'll know that you're with me. If you are not taking the class, you can feel free to stay on. We're going to start in about 10 minutes, and it'll be about 2 hours to 2.5 hours long. All right. How's everybody doing? Having a good day? Okay, yeah, there it is. All right. Hey, Catherine. Okay, I was wondering who the other kit was for. Your mom, that's awesome. Is this her first time? I'm assuming not, since this is an advanced class, but you're really good, so I'm sure you're going to help her out if she is more beginner. Hey, we got a couple more people on. Hello, we're going to start in a little bit, 7 minutes or so. Comment, let me know that you're here, and say hi. We have 10 people signed up for the class. I don't expect that everybody will take the class today, but if you want to take the class later, you can take it on YouTube. I'm going to post it after this class. I'll post it on YouTube, and then you can take it whenever you want, or if you do need to kind of like dip out at some point during the class, just know that you can pause, go back to the YouTube video, pick up where you left off, because it is going to be a 2 hour to 2.5 hour class, depending on how fast we go. So hang tight for about 5 more minutes. Wait for a couple people to get on. Make sure you have something to drink near you, maybe a snack or something. We will take a break in between if you need to. But I've got my water. How's everybody doing? Did everybody's kits come in all right? So again, I'm just going to keep reiterating this. If you are scrolling through Facebook and you see this and thinking, what in the world is that? I am about to start a live virtual class. It's going to be an advanced class. We're starting in about 5 minutes. So these are going to be very detailed cookies, not necessarily for beginners. There's going to be a lot of advanced techniques. So the expectation is that this is not your first rodeo and you've done it before. You can come back later. You can watch the YouTube video if you're taking the class. But starting in a few minutes. Okay, so I think I know, let's see. We have 10 people who purchase kits, and I think I know everybody except for 2 people. So that's cool. And most of y'all have probably taken like 3 of my classes, 2 to 3 classes. So alright, just a few more minutes here. I always like to kind of hop on early just in case people have troubles connecting on Facebook. So hopefully it was easy peasy and my instructions were clear and you had no trouble with it. But I always like to pop on just in case this people's first time, and you know, I assume that some people don't even have Facebook. So I think one of my regulars, I believe she does the YouTube videos because I don't think she has Facebook. But so comment, let me know that you're here, say hi. As you go throughout the class, feel free to comment, and if you have any questions, as soon as you type it in, maybe not real time, but like I'll see it eventually and I'll respond. So if you have any questions and you want to shoot those to me during the class, I'm constantly looking at the comments and I will answer them as we go. It's going to be a little bit interactive kind of during the break. I'm going to have a couple door prizes, which everybody love. And it'll be about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. Again, if you need to dip out at any point, feel free to do so. And then pick up where you left off with the YouTube video. 2 more minutes. Okay. It says we have 4 people. So I told my husband, I said, I think we're going to have about 5 people taking the class live, which might be about right. So my first class was the LSU football. We had 67 people, but only maybe half of them, 30, took the class live, and then the rest took it on the YouTube version of it. And then last night we had a class. It was a beginner class, fall themed beginner, and we had 35 people sign up, and I think we had about 15 of those people taking the live class. So the virtual option kind of makes it cool that If you can't take it during that live class, you can take it the next day or a couple days out. I even had some people take it 2 weeks out. I don't necessarily recommend that because the fresher, like the sooner you do it, the fresher the icings and the cookies are. However, they're still fresh within 2 weeks, so there's always that option if you absolutely can't do it, you know, that weekend or week or whatever. So, okay, make sure you have a pair of scissors, okay? And then if you saw in the instructions, you're going to want some water or vodka or clear alcohol, like any clear, like vodka. I have vodka or Everclear. So, kind of weird. If you don't have vodka, you can just have some water. We literally only need a couple of drops. So, just a tiny bit of water, maybe in like a little cup or a little bowl, because we're going to mix well, actually, you don't need the bowl because I gave you a little cup. So that silver that's in that cup, you can add the water to that. Not right now, obviously, but the vodka or the water is going to help mix it up and make it like a paste. So if you don't have vodka, water works fine. Vodka does work better, though, just for future reference. Okay? All right, so let's get started. Make sure you have your scissors. Okay, comment whenever you want to. I am going to try to go at a slower pace, or kind of like a pace I would do in an in-person class. Of course, it's a little different because I can't see y'all. Sometimes people let me know when I'm going too fast, so I'm going to try my best to slow it down. We're going to decorate 4 cookies, and I assume that they all came intact. You have lots of goodies in your kit. So the first thing that we're going to do is just pull everything out of your box. Okay, so in a minute I'm about to flip the camera. Just give me 30 seconds to do so that you will see my workstation here. Alright, but in the meantime, just go ahead and take everything out of your box. Place your parchment paper down just like you would do in a regular class. Most of y'all have taken a class with me, so I'm not going to go super thorough with all of the beginning basics and stuff, because I assume you all know what to do already, or you already have everything laid out. So I'm going to go quickly through this, okay? Alright, let me switch it over here real quick. Hang tight. Okay, so y'all should see my hands here, okay? We are going to, actually, you know what, I didn't get all my stuff out, but we're going to start with the worksheet kind of like we always do. Okay, and then it really doesn't matter which icing bag you grab, but for now I'm going to grab the red. Okay, so if you've taken a class with me before, you know that the one that has a line on it is the thicker one. Okay, so you should have the red, the orange, and the white should all have lines on it. Okay, these are your thick ones. These are going to be for outlining and detailing. All right, and so when we do the worksheet, we want the thick one because we're just going to practice here for a couple of minutes. All right, now, I always do this in a class. Even though y'all know what to do, I'm still going to show you because I found a new little trick that I want to share with you. So on every single icing bag, you're going to hold it right under the knot, kind of into your palm by the thumb. Now, a little trick that I have not been telling people in the past, but I'm starting to now, is if you tuck this thumb in and kind of like put your other fingers over it, that's going to give you a little bit more strength as you're piping your bag. Okay, so I used to just kind of teach this way, and now I'm starting to say tuck your thumb in because it does seem to be a little bit more helpful. And as I was doing cookie decorating on my own, I was realizing I was doing this anyway, so why not teach it, right? Okay, so we want to have the other pointer finger right here to steady our hand. Okay, sometimes I go without doing it, however, this does help. Something I showed everybody yesterday in the class, I always talk about a number 2 pencil when you're cutting a hole. I actually have a number 2 pencil right now. And we want to cut a hole that's about the size or the width of this number 2 pencil, okay, the lead part. So that means if I line it up, you want to cut about where that pencil lead stops, okay, right where it meets the wood. All right, so if you are ready, go ahead and cut that little piece off. You can always cut a little bit more, so try not to cut too big of a hole. Start smaller. All right, and then when you cut it, it's going to be flat. So then I just kind of take it and I press around the other seam so that when I look at it, it's a hole and not a flat line. Okay, so after you cut it, kind of press it, and then we're going to start on the lines. Okay, so just a couple of things to remember. We're going to be off the paper, so our tip is not touching the paper. You want to be about 1 centimeter off, and sometimes I even do about 1 inch off. Kind of depends on how I'm feeling. When I teach a class, sometimes I have to be up a little higher because I'm looking under my phone. All right, so go ahead and do the worksheet. We're going to do the whole worksheet. If we practice off of the cookie on the worksheet, sometimes we feel a little bit more confident to do it on the cookie. All right, so again, if you have any questions as we go ahead and comment. I will see them and I will respond. Again, if you are taking this class with the cookie kit, I assume you have taken a class with me before, or you kind of know what you're doing. So I'm not going to be explaining too much in the beginning part. Of course, when we get to the step-by-step instructions, I will definitely kind of talk through it a little bit more. All right, so if you cut the right amount, this red line should cover the entire black line. If you can see the black line under it, you're going to cut a little bit more on the tip of the icing bag. And then I did include 2 extra bags for you. However, the bags that I gave you are going to be for detailing at the end. But I say that, but then I also will say that if you cut like a giant hole accidentally, go ahead and use one of those bags to refill with the icing. All right, and I will show you what I mean by that. All right, so you have an extra bag. If at any point you cut like a giant hole, no worries, just stick it in here, squeeze it out, and recut it, okay? All right, just about maybe 30 more seconds. Okay, so the first day of fall was on Monday. Yay, even though it really does not feel like it at all. But it was pretty hot this week here. I'm looking forward to a little bit cooler weather. Okay, once you finish your worksheet, and even though I did not, just put it off to the side. Make sure it's not in the way. Okay. And so, again, make sure the ones that have a 1 on it are the line. These are the thicker ones. You just want to make sure you differentiate these between the ones that are thin. All right. Okay, so everybody should have a marker, right? Yours may look a little bit different. I gave y'all some nicer ones, but the marker, this is great for advanced cookies because you can actually draw on it exactly what you want before you add the icing. Okay, so like for instance, we're going to start with the pumpkin, which is this one. So looking at it, obviously, if I were to just go ahead and start, adding the icing, there's a lot of room for mistake and error, so that's why we have the pen. People might say, oh, it's kind of cheating. Well, it might be kind of like cheating, but who cares? The cookie's going to turn out looking better anyway. So, in my opinion, it's worth it. And you don't ever see the marker underneath. Like, some people will get tan colored ones, and that kind of like blend in with the cookie. That's a good option as well, especially if you're going to be doing like a white. However, if you have a darker color like the orange or the red, it's really not a problem, because it's just going to go right over it and you won't see the marker underneath. Okay, so just keep that in mind for the future. Tan colored if you're doing it for like a white. All right, first thing we're going to do, we are going to create a dot, just dot right in the middle. So try to be as close as you can to like the exact middle, and we're just going to draw a little dot. It looks like a Sharpie, but I promise it is edible. Okay, so once you have that little dot, every single like bump here, you're going to create a line from the middle out to the part where it divots in. So I'm going to show you the finished product. Okay, so you see how it has those little segments, right? Those lines right there. So every time that it divots in, you're going to draw a line. So we're going to go from the middle out. And again, it doesn't have to be perfect, as long as you know kind of like where that line is going to be. And even if I draw a line and it's not perfect, I can go back over it with the icing and make it look better. This is not like, you don't necessarily have to follow these lines once you make them, but it is just something kind of helpful. And they're not going to be perfect because we didn't use like a protractor or whatever, and that's okay. Now, when you get to the tag is going down the middle of two different segments. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Like, sometimes what I'll do is I'll draw, like if I know that bump is going to be about there, I'll just make a little dot right in the middle of that tag. And then sometimes I'll even go ahead and like finish that segment of the pumpkin, if that makes sense. So whatever in your mind is going to help you to make it look as perfect as possible, then go ahead and do that. Okay. So now, once you have the lines, then we're ready to outline every single one of those lines. Okay, it doesn't matter where you start. I sometimes start in the middle, and then like take one line and then go ahead and come in, like do each segment. But it's up to you how you want to do it. You don't necessarily have to do exactly what I do. But we are going to need to cut a hole in the orange, the thick one. Okay, so when you're ready, go ahead and cut that hole. Remember, it's about the width of that pencil lead. Okay, so cut the hole. Now, we're going to start to outline. Again, it doesn't necessarily matter where you start, but we're going over the black line, and then we're rounding the outline of the cookie, the edge of the cookie, and then come back in. So once I have one segment, I'm not gonna like go back over that same line. I'm just gonna come right, hug that line, then follow the edge of the cookie, and then go over the new black line. Okay? And so what you're going to find too is a bunch of icing is going to start to bunch up in the middle. I didn't really mean to say bunch that many times. But that's okay. It really doesn't matter because, see, you're going to have your stem over it, and that's going to cover that mistake. Or not necessarily a mistake, but kind of like a flaw. And so don't worry about that. Okay, so we're just continuing to outline the little segments of our pumpkin. And as I go around my pumpkin, I kind of move my cookie because I'm right-handed, and so wherever like my right wrist is, I don't like for the cookie to be right under my right wrist. I like there to be this open space so that I don't accidentally put my wrist into my cookie, which all that work and then it's gone from one little mistake. So that's why I try to keep that open space at my right wrist. All right, so it takes a little bit of time, of course. Lots of control, but see how easy, I don't know about easy, but you see how much easier it is when you drew the lines? Because now you feel like you can do the icing without really like making a big mistake or having to wipe it off and redo it again and again. And I have just one more segment. The last one only needs the little outer edge. Okay. All right. So, hopefully you finished your outline. I mean, it's kind of hard because I can't see y'all. I'm going to take a drink of water in case you're not done, give you a little extra time. But once we have the outline, we can now get our toothpick ready. Okay, so you should have a toothpick in your kit. The toothpick's going to be really good for getting into these little tiny corners right there at the middle. And again, you're going to have the stem right there. So if it's not perfect, if this looks like a hot mess right here in the middle, just know that your stem is going to cover some of those mistakes. So don't freak out too much about that, okay? Because it is kind of hard getting that thin icing in there. All right, now if you've taken a class with me before, you might know that when you're doing sections that are this close to each other, you're not going to do every single one at the same time, okay? So we're going to do alternating. So we'll flood this one, and then we'll skip one, we'll flood the other one, skip, flood, flood, right? And so hopefully, I don't remember if we end up with an odd, it should be an even amount. So you're going to cut a small hole, just a little bit bigger, okay? You really don't want it too big, like you don't want it to be the width of the pencil because you're getting into some smaller spaces, okay? So that's kind of another thing with like an advanced class. You kind of start to know that even with a thin one, sometimes you cut a small amount because you're having a smaller surface area that you're doing this with, okay? So when you're ready, remember flooding one. I go from the outside, spiral in, and then at each one you want to take that toothpick and push it to the outline. So don't do like all of them and then take your toothpick and start to like spread because it's going to dry too fast. Sometimes I can get away with doing like 2 at a time. For the sake of the class, I'm going to do 1 at a time. And as you're moving that icing towards the middle, that toothpick's going to help to kind of get into that small little space. Again, I'm going to rotate so that my wrist is not going to mess up the cookie. Okay, so we are flooding every other segment. Just be careful when you turn it. Try not to bump it on anything. So it's a little tricky getting into those corners. Now, everybody should have enough orange to do the whole pumpkin and then the little pumpkins on the other cookies. However, you might notice that you do have less of the orange than the other colors. And so if you run into an issue where you run out of the thin orange, you can always take the thick orange, put it in a little bowl, add some more water, and then like just a couple drops of water, and then you have thin orange again. But we should be good. We might finish the whole thing, but you should have enough orange. That was my bad because that was the first one that I made. And then I was like, I'm gonna give more than that next time. Okay. Once you are finished with the orange, so again, we're gonna let this dry. It kind of looks like a flower right now, but we're gonna let it dry before we do the other segments, okay? Let me move this. I just realized that. Okay. What I like to do with the thin icing when I'm done with it is just fold it in and kind of roll it up so that it doesn't leak out everywhere. Okay. There we go. All right, so we're going to let this dry. If you're ready, slowly, carefully move it over, up, or to the side so that we know we're letting that one dry. Okay? We're trying not to bump it, just letting those segments dry before we do the next ones, right? All right. You know, it really doesn't matter which one we do next, but I'm going to do the truck. So, grab the truck. And then grab your thin white icing. Thin white icing. And then also grab your little coffee stir. Okay. This is going to act like a spatula. So we're going to drop a little bit of icing in here. And then we're going to take our stir and just kind of like spread on that icing with the stir. Kind of make it as smooth as you can. And so what this is going to do is it's going to kind of make it look like the glass, quote unquote, is kind of like underneath the car part. So it's kind of it's a cool thing. Makes it look cool. So you're going to go ahead and cut, not as tiny as the outline, a little bit bigger. Okay? And then just kind of drop some in, maybe about like 2 inches worth. And it honestly, so I didn't have us use like the marker yet because it honestly doesn't matter. Like I would say go a little bit bigger, like leave like a centimeter at the top and on the sides, and then just kind of like go down to about where the first, like right here, you see this little bump right here, and the same symmetrical one on that side. Come about that far down. And then you want to have a thin layer, not too thin, that you can see the cookie underneath. But we also don't want it too thick that it is the same height as the truck part that's going to be around it, if that makes sense. So not looking for perfection here because we're just going to be putting red over it. All right. Once you finish that part, I'm going to tuck this thin icing tip in and fold it up so that I don't lose any of the white icing. Okay, grab your marker. So we obviously have to let this part dry first before we do the top. But we can go ahead and kind of like see where the bumper is going to be, and this little license plate, it's a very, very tiny license plate. But after you've done that and you've grabbed your marker, first thing you're going to do is kind of outline this little license plate. Alright, it's tiny, tiny, so you're just drawing like a little rectangle. From where you see it kind of pop out, draw a line up, over, and down. And then the bumper, we're gonna draw a line across. We're gonna add a little bit of dimension to it by sort of curving it, so you don't want to just be like straight. Bumper, you're gonna kind of sort of like curve it. And you can kind of go over it again if you mess up. Like I said, this is for you. This is your visual. So if you have to go back over it, like if you don't like the line or you want to make it a little different, then that's up to you. Nobody's going to know. Once you add the icing, nobody knows that you messed up that line that's underneath, right? Okay. And then the other part we're going to do is right here, we're going to draw a line. So the little part that divots out, so on the right side there's two bumps. The first one is actually like part of the pumpkin. The second one is the mirror. And then same thing on the left side. This one is the rear view mirror, or this, whatever you call them, the little mirror. So right after the mirror, you're going to draw a line straight down to meet the bumper. And then the same thing on this side. So it's literally just like a tiny bit of cookie on that side. Okay. So by now your white should be pretty much, well, not totally dry, but definitely drying because it's a thin layer. But again, just like where that mirror ends and kind of where that line is, we're going to draw a line straight across. Okay, so my icing is kind of in the way. So I'm just going to scrape off a little bit because we're going to draw a line straight across. Okay, we're almost done here. Now with the next line we're going to do is going to be a little rectangle inside of this bigger rectangle. Okay, so just somewhere in there, draw a rectangle. Try to make it look symmetrical. Okay. So, at this point, hopefully I'm not moving too fast and you got those lines on there. So we already used our red for the little worksheet, right? So now we're going to use the red. The truck is going to be a red truck. Everybody loves red trucks, right? It's like, what's the fascination with that? I don't know. But I like red trucks too. Okay, so we want to outline everything except for the bottom part of the bumper and the license plate. So these, the bumper and the license plate are going to be white. All of these lines right here, you're going to go over them with the red. And it, like I said, again, it doesn't matter where you start. I'm going to start on the bottom left. I am going to do this part of the bumper, just not the bottom part. And I'm going to do the outer part of the truck. Straight across. Okay, so everywhere that you have a black line, except for the license plate, you're going to go ahead and go over it with the thick red. Whoops. Okay. Alright, so by the time you're done, it should look something like this. Once you have finished that, we're not going to flood it quite yet. Now, I've done this truck quite a few times, different designs, but at this point, I know just from experience that this white part is dry enough for me to add the red outline to the top of the truck. Okay. So we're sticking with our red, our thick red. Okay, now remember, these two bumps, the first ones near the base of the truck, these are going to be mirrors. So we're going to cut those off, and on the right side, you're also going to cut off the top bump. That's going to be the leaf of the pumpkin. Okay, so we're going to go straight up, we're going to go around the edge of the cookie, down, cut off that mirror. That's going to be our first line. And then you're going to draw a window. Okay, so we're going to be kind of going over the whites. You want you don't want to see the cookie at all. So just make sure you've got a line, like a little box right over that white. So the first thing, you're going to start on the right or the left, cut off the mirror, and the little second bump, come across on the top, and then down, cut off the other mirror. Alright, so this part is probably, the window is probably the hardest part. You can have a big window or a smaller one, doesn't matter, whatever you want. So we're going to be, I like to do the bottom line first. Kind of look at it, try to make it look symmetrical. And then I typically will do the side and the top about the same outline, kind of like with rounded edges that I have on my truck. I had a little gap there, so I just added a little bit more icing right there. Okay. So this little box in the middle, you should see, you know, it's completely white. It's kind of underneath where the red's gonna be, right? So the rest of the red part's going to be like a pillow on top of the cookie. So like if you think of the fluffiness of the icing, it is going to be like a pillow, whereas the white is kind of like a blanket or a sheet on top of the cookie. Kind of an interesting analogy, but okay. All right. So I want to actually do the bumper and the license plate first. We're going to outline, we're going to do the side and the bottom of the bumper. We're going to follow those lines that we made earlier. and then we're gonna, you know, complete that and then close in the license plate, and then we're actually gonna flood the bumper first, okay? So the reason why we're doing that is because I want the bumper to dry as long as possible, because we're gonna attempt to put the silver on it. So we want this to be one of the first things that we do. So then when we put the silver, that's going to be the last thing that we do. So we have as much time as possible to let that dry. Okay. So first things first, the icing, the white icing that has a line on it, you're going to cut that tiny hole. Okay. And so we're going to outline. Oh, this one is thin compared to the red. I don't follow I don't follow a recipe. I don't follow measurements in my recipes. So sometimes some of them are a little bit thinner or thicker. Okay, so you have the license plate, the bumper, both are outlined. Okay. Oops, sorry. Now that we have that, we want to grab our thin white icing. Bumper first, okay? So we're going to fill in this bumper. Hug as close as you can to that red line. You can always use your toothpick if you need to. As you get more advanced, you don't have to use your toothpick as much. Sometimes I don't use it at all. All right. So that's the first thing that we want, so that we have as long as possible to dry. All right. Now we can grab our red, thin red. All right, if you didn't already, kind of massage it a little bit, as I kind of had told y'all in, I think it was my email. Sometimes after a few days of just not using it, the color will start to kind of like separate from the icing. So that's why I just kind of go in and I sort of massage it, because if you don't, then it kind of looks splotchy. When it's like fresh made icing like that day, you don't have that problem. But since I shipped these a couple days ago, or whenever that was, I just do that. Okay, tiny hole, because we've got some small spaces here, right? So we don't want that hole to be too big. So we're gonna cut about the size of the outline or a little bit bigger. Again, you can always cut more, but you have a lot of small spaces here. And then this is gonna be the same concept as the pumpkin. You wanna alternate. So like first we can do, and if you already started going, that's okay. But just hold off, or you can pick it out. We're gonna do the two little slivers on the side, and then that middle rectangle, okay? And then you're gonna do the top part, that entire outer rectangle there, you're gonna do that as well. So then the only part that will not be flooded is that middle kind of N or pi symbol. And so that's like, once the outer part's dry, then we can go back in and it'll make it look super defined when it dries. If we do it all at once, it'll kind of like mesh together. Okay? So again, we're doing the two slivers here on the side. You can use your toothpick to kind of get into those tight corners. Okay. An advanced tip is to put in enough icing that you can kind of like cover the outline with that thinner icing. Sometimes people think it looks a little bit cleaner if you kind of cover the outline. That's totally a preference, you know. Some people don't care. I'm kind of somewhere in the middle. Sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. I don't like to see like a lot of the outline, so I do kind of go over it a little bit. But to do that, you would just take your toothpick and just kind of like pull it, drag it to kind of cover the outline, but obviously not too much that it like overflows over the outline. Hopefully that makes sense. Pop any air bubbles. That's a nice red color. I like that. Alright, and then once you've done the 3 on the bottom, then we're going to do the top. It's thin enough, like the surface area is thin enough that sometimes I just kind of like keep my hand there and squeeze till it fills most of that surface area. Alright. Make sure that that thin icing is all the way pushed to the outline, and that you have enough that you can't see the cookie underneath, and you can't see the black marks from the pen, right? Sorry, I had my Pandora playing and it was a live class. Or, sorry, my mind is I'm so concentrated. It was live music and they were clapping. So if that's what you heard, that was what it was. Okay. Alright. So at this point, your cookie should look something like this, hopefully. Now, we're going to let it dry. Alright. So very carefully move it up to the top or over to the side, trying not to mess it up. Okay. And then in a few minutes we will finish the rest of that flooding, okay? Alright, go ahead and grab your door with your wreath. Or not wreath. With the pumpkins. It's going to have a sign, not a wreath. Okay. So this is what it looks like. This one might be one of the easiest ones. Well, I say that, but then y'all are going to hold me to it if it's harder. So, I don't know. We are going to take our marker and kind of outline some of these things here. The most important part is going to be the bottom, the pumpkins. Okay, so that's the finished product. Something like that. Alright, what I outlined, so nothing on the actual door needs to be outlined. It's actually going to be the pumpkins. Okay, because if you're looking at this, kind of like I said with the pumpkin, it's really hard to just go straight into it with the icing and like to get what you want it to look like without having to take it off and do it again. And so if we have the marker, it makes it a lot easier. Okay, so the things that you know for sure that you already have are the stem and the outer part of the pumpkin on the left. And then you kind of have like a little divot right under here, if you can see that. And so this is going to be the first pumpkin, and then we want a second pumpkin. The easiest way that I do this is I start at the stem, and I go ahead and I finish the stem. So I literally just draw a line down to kind of like complete the stem. And then I know that the pumpkin is going to be symmetrical on the right side to the left. So I do about 1 centimeter of a curved line like this. So that's like the right side of the pumpkin. Okay. And then we have another pumpkin. So then I go ahead and I draw like right under it and kind of to the right of it I do another stem. All right. And then now you want to draw 2 lines, so you're going to have a curved line out on the left and on the right to kind of like create the second pumpkin. Okay, so you want to start at the stem. You're going to draw like a little semicircle towards the bottom. Again, if at any point you're doing this and you don't like your line, you can redo a line and just remember that the second one is the one that you want to stick with. Okay, and then on the right side, symmetrical to that semicircle, you're going to do another circle. Okay, it's starting to look like a little pumpkin. Okay. All right, now, I like to have the bottom of my pumpkin kind of have like little ridges a little bit. So just make sure, like this left one, you already kind of have it for you. You have a semicircle, and then you should kind of dip down a little bit so you know that you're going to follow that edge of the cookie. On this one right here, I kind of create 3 little scallops, little bumps, and you don't have to do this, but I do kind of like that. So that when I go to pipe the orange icing on, I'm gonna like kind of follow that black line. Okay. Now you can either do this part or not, but I do a little V where the stem is just so that I know I'm gonna be coming with the orange over that. All right, so as advertised on this cookie on the left, I decided to have the orange underneath and then go back over it with the thick orange. So kind of different from the other pumpkin that we're doing, where you created the segments. On this one, you're gonna just like fill the whole thing in with orange, and then we'll go back over and do the details. Okay? All right, so then the rest of this is gonna be white. So let's do the pumpkins first. So we are doing the outline of the pumpkins. So you're gonna do the black line. We're not doing the stem. Leave the stem black. That's gonna be brown. But you're gonna do the outline of the pumpkin in the orange, the thick orange that has a 1 on it. And then on the left side, you're gonna come, even though we didn't draw a black line over here, you are gonna outline the edge of the cookie there as well. So you can either go for it or watch me. Okay. So I'm just following the lines that I already made. That makes it super easy. And then when people say, "That looks so perfect," you don't tell them your secret. Alright. So on the left side, on that left pumpkin, outlining the edge of the cookie. So right now they should kind of look like little apples. But when we're finished, they won't look like apples. So when you're finished, that should be just what you have. 2 little outlined pumpkins. And then when you're ready, you're going to grab your thick white, because we're going to do the door. All right, the door part. And you are going to do the entire rectangle. However, just be mindful of where your stems are, and don't, like the second stem over here, make sure you outline that like in white. And you know, sometimes what I do is I'll even kind of hug that orange line to just kind of help have some definition. I like to start on the bottom left where that stem is. We're going to outline the entire door. Okay. Getting as close to the edge as possible without it falling over. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and outline hugging next to that pumpkin, but leaving the stem part on the right pumpkin. Alright, y'all know where we're headed, right? We're gonna do the white. Okay, flooding all the white. Nothing special here. We're just taking this icing and we are flooding the entire door in the white. Okay? So, I like to start on the outside and spiral inside. So outside to inside. I'm honestly not worried about right now like perfection. I'm just dropping it all in because it's a bigger surface area. So I just want to make sure that I get it in quickly so that I can start pushing it to the outline without it drying. You have a small window before it starts to harden. About 2 minutes or so. Okay. All right. So that's a lot of white icing for that door. It's so much whiter than the finished one because this one is like 1 month old, I think. Obviously, I don't, nobody's going to be eating this one. But hey, it still looks good even after a month. Which is great. Okay, so after you have the white part here, we're going to go ahead and do the pumpkin. We're not too worried about these two meshing together because we are going to go back over it with a thick orange. Alright, so you're going to have your thin orange, and you can just go ahead and flood both of these. Now I will say try not to, put too much that you can't see where that first pumpkin ends and where the second one starts. Make sure you can still kind of tell. But it doesn't really matter as much because any mistakes we're going to just go back over with a thick orange. Right. But as long as I can kind of still see where that line is, I'll be able to go back over it with the thick one. Okay. So while we have the orange, let's carefully move this one, the door, over. Again, very carefully. Don't want it to mess up. Okay, and then bring over the pumpkin. So you should be able to see here that the part that is dry now, it doesn't look as shiny. So you can definitely tell that the top layer is dry enough. And it's dry enough for us to put the icing in the alternating ones now. without them running together. So we're going to drop, same thing that we did before, drop some in, push it to the corner. Try not to overlap, you know, too much. Try not to put too much in because you don't necessarily want to go like over the one that you've already done. You want to stay kind of right inside here. So try not to put too much. Sometimes I put a little bit less than I would have on the other one, and then I just kind of like spread it around because I don't want it to go too much over. All right, so this is going to take a little bit of time. So just go ahead and work at your own pace. I'm trying not to go too fast. If you do get a little bit behind, we're about to have a little break in probably about 15 minutes or so. So now you can see that the icing that you're doing right now definitely looks different than the one that's dry. It's shinier. What else? It's a little bit of a different color because what happens is when it dries, it kind of like changes color. I know that's kind of weird, but it actually will darken when it dries. I don't know if y'all have ever like noticed that, like a really dark color, like a red. When it's dry, it'll look even more so like a dark red. So that's a good thing to note. Like if you're doing a custom order, like let's say you want to, you know, start a business like me, I'm all for it. Especially if you're taking this class and you're probably a little bit more advanced. Then when you have an order and somebody asks for like, I don't know, lavender or like blush pink, that's one that I get a lot. Then you have to actually make the icing a little bit lighter, knowing, like, you have the knowledge that when it dries, it's going to be darker. I cannot tell you how many times I have done, like, for instance, skin color. Somebody wanted, like, pale or, like, a light skin, like a dark, like, light skin dark. And it was just like, oh, my gosh. It's so hard because when you're making it, you have to note, okay, it's going to be a couple of shades darker when it dries. Same thing like when you're painting a room. Same kind of concept. So just kind of keep that in mind if you ever get into the business and somebody asks for a light color. Okay. So the cookie should look like this. And once you are done, when it dries, it looks even prettier. Right, like this. This one was also from like 3 weeks ago. But it looks pretty, like when it's dry, you can kind of like see those segments of the pumpkin. This is like a top-down view of a pumpkin. Okay. Again, a lot of moving and grooving. We're gonna move this one over to the side, let this one dry a little bit. Okay. All right. So we're going to go with this little bucket of apples. So this is a very fall thing, even though I have not personally picked apples. I have heard that it's fun, but hopefully one day I can go. So what I did on this one, you have a couple of things going on here. So we've got the apples on the top, but what I did that you might not actually be able to see is I put red, like one full layer of red. Like I went in here and I just did an entire red layer. Okay? And then I went back over, this might sound kind of complicated, and I did the ones that you see underneath these 3. Okay, so then I went and I did like little circles, flooded them, let those dry, and then added the 3 on the top. It's going to be a lot of outline, flooding alternating ones, letting it dry, coming back, flooding the other ones, letting it dry, and then doing the 3 on the top. Okay, it sounds complicated. The reason why we do the base, why I choose to do the one base all red, is because let's say you do, you know, a circle and then another circle and you have a little space. It looks kind of tacky if you have, if you can see the cookie underneath, right? So if you have it completely in red, and then when you go to add the circles, you won't be like, oh gosh, like, I need to put some more red in there because I can see the cookie. Like, it'll look better. It doesn't have, your circles don't have to be as perfect, right? So we have our marker, hopefully close by because we've been using it. And the first thing we're going to do is just draw a straight line across, indicating the top of our wooden bucket. Okay, so you can kind of like see where that is. And it's going to be right where this part, this little bump ends and that bump ends. You're going to draw a line from that end to that end. A little hand-eye coordination going from one to the other. Okay. I have 5 wooden boards. Okay, so I'm going to draw 4 lines from the top to the bottom. Okay, again, if you mess up, if you end up drawing a line and you're like, oh, that doesn't look right, just go back over it, you know, make another line, and then just remember that when you go to do the icing, you know which line you're going to do. So we have, 1, 2, 3, 4, yep, about a centimeter apart from each other. So I'm going to come here, down 1, 2, 3, and 4. So as you can see, my lines over here, obviously, these 2 are a lot closer. So if I was really, you know, particular, I could just kind of like go back over and say, okay, I'm going to redo. There we go. Then that looks like a little better. Of course, it's up to you. It's like I said, this is for you. This is not to impress anybody. This is for you to be able to get the lines that you want. Okay? All right. On the top, you have a little point. That's going to be a leaf. So when we go to outline with red, you're going to cut off that little leaf. So if you want to just kind of indicate here that that's going to be kind of where the red ends, leave a little space on the top, you can. It's not necessary really, but if you want. Okay, since we have already used the red, the thick red, what we're going to do is we are going to just go ahead and outline this entire top part. So we're going to come across here, and then we're going to outline the whole little part. Sorry, if y'all can hear my husband, he's playing video games, of course. So, I don't know if you can hear him, but if you do and you're like, what is that yelling? He gets really, really into video games. Alright. So once you have this part, this is actually a cupcake cutter. You can probably see it, right? And even like this, it looks like a cupcake. But we turned it into a bucket of apples. Alright, we're going to go ahead and take our light brown. Okay, you only have one light brown. You don't have a thick and a thin, you just have one. It might have a line on it, don't worry. It's all going to be one. So this is going to be a medium consistency. If you've taken a class with me before, you know that the medium consistency means you can both outline and flood with this, okay? So when you're ready, we're going to cut that tiny hole. Remember, it's not too tiny, not too big. It looks, when you cut that little piece off, it's going to kind of like look like the width of this number 2 pencil, okay? So we are actually going to outline every single board, and we are going to double outline it. So what does that mean? Well, we're going to do opposite that we did with the pumpkin. Like how I said you don't have to draw that line, we actually are going to do another line. We're going to kind of hug that one, do another line. Okay, and we're also hugging the red part as well. Double line. So you're going to see that this is a little thinner than the other thick ones, but also a little thicker than your other thin ones. Does that make sense? It's medium, somewhere in the middle. Okay. Once you have the boards, we're going to wait and let it dry a little bit. So because it is a medium consistency, the outline takes a little bit longer to dry. Just giving you all a chance to catch up below if you're behind. Alright, so we're going to let that dry. And then we're going to go ahead and flood the red. So again, nothing special here. We are just putting red entirely in this outlined part, okay? Now you still have that small hole because you still have a part of the truck that you have to do. So you don't want that hole to be too big. When you're doing more advanced, you're going to notice that sometimes, I think I already said this, but sometimes you're going to cut a smaller hole for the thin icing because you have a lot of like teeny tiny places to flood. And then a lot of times what I do is like, I'll transfer bags a lot. So if I have like a bigger surface area, I'll cut a bigger hole, and then as I move on to a smaller one, I'll put that icing in another bag and cut a smaller hole. But we'll get to that in a bit. Okay. Nice red color. All right. Again, we're going to let this part dry. So, hey, while we have the red, what if we go ahead and do that red part on our truck? Because by now, the rest of it should be dry enough that we can add this last red part right here. And it'll still keep it very defined, okay? So, your thin red icing, we're going to come all in this little part right here. Toothpick is ready to go, spreading that icing into those little tiny corners. All right, kind of hug the other parts of that truck. Get into the little tiny spaces. We don't want to see any part of the cookie. So when you're done, you should look like this. Wait for y'all to catch up if you need to. The only thing that's missing right now on this, well, not the only thing, but the only base coat, right, is the little license plate. Tiny, tiny license plate. So you can go ahead and drop just a little bit of color. Like it's really just going to be a little dot or two of icing. And then take your toothpick, spread it into the corners. Actually, I think I added too little, so I'm going to add a little bit more. You can do that too, like, as long as you're in that little window of time before it hardens, you can add more. But it's tiny. Okay. So, again, like I said, it's a lot of moving and grooving. We're working on one, letting it dry, work on another, let it dry. So again, we're going to let this one dry, so I'm going to shimmy it over here. Okay, back to the apples. Alright. We have the boards that we want to finish. However, we can only do, same concept as we've been doing, we only want to do alternating, right? Because in order to get the definition that you see in the finished product, if you do every single one, you're not going to get that definition. So we want to do the left one, skip the middle one, do that one, skip the other one, and do the right side one. So we have 1, 2, 3 that we're flooding, and then the rest, the other two, are going to just stay blank for now. Remember that this one is medium, so when you go to do it, we really don't want to use our toothpick at all, okay? Because it's going to dry pretty quickly. And I'm actually keeping it at the same hole that I just did with the outline because we have to use it again. And I don't want a big hole because I don't want to have to transfer this to another bag. So, see, I did that one and I didn't use a toothpick. Okay, and then the middle one, I'm going to drop it in. And I'm like trying to avoid using the toothpick. You can kind of go over the outline. We talked about that in the beginning. Make it look a little cleaner. 2 down, 1 to go for me. Right. So much concentration. The harder the cookie, the more concentration. And the less I start talking. Alright. So, cool. We want to let this dry. Alright. So, I'm going to keep the apples right there. But since I already have that brown, I'll move it over a little. I'm going to do my stems that are on my door. Okay, so hopefully you can see that. So if we have our medium consistency light brown, right? The pumpkin on the right doesn't need to be out, the stem does not need to be outlined because you already have a fully enclosed square. So we're just gonna drop the tiniest amount. I mean, not, sorry, I'm dramatic. You're gonna drop in a little dot of color that's gonna fill that, but obviously not overflow. And then we also want to kind of outline this top stem over here, the left one. Outline it first, and then you can pretty much immediately just drop in the brown icing. Okay, so I'm gonna do the right one first. Drop in some icing. Again, your toothpick is your friend for those tight corners. So there's one stem. Okay. My hand is about to get in the way for just a minute here. Outline first. See how my hand is really shaky? That's because I don't have my other finger steadying it since I'm over trying to do it underneath my phone. Okay. So, we're about to take a little break. But before we do that, let's go ahead and finish the wooden part of our apples. So just kind of like check the other ones to make sure that they're dry enough. And the way that you can kind of tell is it won't look as shiny as it did in the beginning, or as the little pumpkin stems look. And so then, you know, if it doesn't look as shiny and you can kind of tell like, okay, it's starting to kind of dry, then you're pretty much good to be able to put this in without it meshing together. So we'll do the flooding of the other two. Trying to use our toothpick as little as possible, or not at all, maybe. Keep adding, you know, the icing until you think it looks good, or you like the way it looks. All right, so I'm happy with that, so I'm going to do the next one. Kind of coming over the outline a little bit. Sometimes with like a smaller surface area, I don't like go out and spiral in. I just kind of do the whole, like I'll go like squiggle in or just squeeze a lot. Okay. If you do use your toothpick, just a little bit, it's already kind of starting to dry. Just a little. Okay. Again, it does look better once it dries, which is awesome. So, whoops, literally keep bumping the table. Alright, so I'm gonna lay them all out. Show you our progress. Kind of where we're at. So we should have 4 cookies. Yep. So your cookies should look like this. All right. So I know we only have a few people on. I guess the rest are going to be doing the class on the YouTube version. So if you have any questions, this would be a great time to go in and comment and ask me, and I will answer them as I'm looking at the comments. We're going to take a little break, so if you want to get some water, if you want to get something to eat, we are going to take a little break to let them dry a little bit more. So it's 6:20. Oh, sorry, my time. I think it's 5:20. Most of y'all's time that are taking the class. So that means we're about halfway done, which is good. I'm gonna put the camera back on me. Hold on a second. Hello. Okay. So we are about halfway, which is good. That means that we have about an hour. Let me see, not halfway. We're an hour and a half in, my math. So we have an hour maybe to do the detailing. We might not actually take all that time, but we might. So we'll see. Sometimes I don't really know until we're doing it. But we do have quite a few details to get finished. But the good news is that we have the entire base coats pretty much done except for the apples. So other than that, we just have kind of a few details to do. So that's good. And so take just a few minutes, get water if you need to, type out any questions if you have any questions for me. I will answer them. And yeah, we're going to be having a door prize. So I know that there's only a few of you that are actually had the cookie kits taking the class. But I have a list of all the participants who had bought a cookie kit in class. And so y'all will be put into a little pot to get some door prizes. I'm going to do 2 door prizes. So if you're watching the YouTube video and you hear your name called but you weren't at the live class, still applies. You're still going to get the door prize. Okay? I am going to step out for just a moment and I'll be right back. So take just a couple of minutes, okay? I'm going to put it back on the cookies here. If you want to catch up, this is your time. So make sure your cookies look like this, all right? I'll be back in literally 30 seconds. Okay, let's see. Here we go. All right. So, it doesn't look like anybody had any questions yet. Are y'all good? You want to comment and let me know that you are doing all right? Okay. So, our first door prize is going to be, let me see, 50% off a future virtual class. So 50% off, that's pretty sweet. Most of my classes are like 35, I think I'm doing now with like the virtual. I'm trying to kind of make it similar to an in-person class with the shipping. So they're like 35 to 40, so that would be like 20 bucks off. So that's the first one. The second door prize is going to be 25% off a feature class. So those two, I'm using a random name generator for the 10 people that have signed up. And so, first one, hold on, takes me a minute to generate it. The first one is Catherine, and I know that she's taking the class right now. So I'm happy you won 50% off a future virtual class for 1 cookie kit. Awesome. All right, second person to win a door prize. Catherine Bozeman. I don't know if I'm saying the last name right, but Catherine B, not Catherine Coulter. So Catherine Coulter and Catherine Bozeman. Catherine Bozeman, you won 25% off a future virtual class. So, awesome. I will send you guys the discount codes that you can enter into my website. So that's how that'll work. I got 3 that are going to be coming up. So one is going to be actually a pumpkin spice themed one at the end of October, and then I'll have a Thanksgiving and a Christmas one. So those, I have not advertised them yet or posted them. So if you want to just kind of wait a couple of weeks, and then when I post them, hopefully in a couple of weeks, you can use that discount code to get the door prize. All right. So, y'all ready to jump back in? If you're taking the YouTube class, obviously you would have just fast forwarded at this point. But let me switch back over. Oops. Okay. So here we go. It's gonna be a lot, but we got it. And the first thing that we're gonna do, we are going to have our pumpkin. So I gotta move mine over. Y'all might get a kick out of this. I stepped out for 30 seconds to ask my husband if he could be a little bit more quiet because he was getting real excited with his video game. And then he felt so bad. But not even sure if y'all could hear him or not, but I just wanted to just to make sure. All right. All right, so here's what we're gonna do. We want to make this white tag. I know that the fall is kind of opposite, so move it this way. How did we do the tag? All right. This is something that I personally do. It's not necessarily how everybody does it, but I'm gonna explain it first because as you can see, the tag, and again, this cookie's like old, so ours is gonna look even better. But if I put the tag here, and I have my orange here and my cookie here, then that means when I go to add in the thin icing, I'm gonna have a significant like dip down because this has icing and this doesn't. So again, not everybody does this, and some people, like, they would have not even like put orange icing here. I think that kind of looks tacky. Sounds bad, but I want the tag to look like it's on top of the entire pumpkin. So if I had, like, with my pen, had drawn like a tag and not even put icing there, it would just kind of look like it's next to the pumpkin and not like on top of it. So the way that I fix that, we're going to outline the entire tag here that you can see. And then we're also going to come up. We can't use the pen on this, but just imagine we're making like a rectangle. The sides of this corner are kind of cut off, and so we're going to kind of do the same thing up here, kind of mirror this part on here, okay? We don't want to come up too high because we know that the stem is going to be right here. So we're just coming up about to like right there, okay? And then what we're going to do after we outline, we're actually going to like put some icing on here to make it the same level as the orange. That was a long explanation, but trust me, it's going to make sense once we do it. Okay? So if you want to follow me, you can. We're just going to first do, let me rotate this so my hand is not in the way. Okay. I like to first do the bottom part, the tag part that you can already see. So just outline the entire part of the cookie. Okay? So now, remember, stem is going to be here. We're going to be about an inch into the cookie. So pick a starting point. Doesn't matter where, as long as you have enough room for the stem, and you're going to go straight line right to the edge of the tag that's next to the orange. Again, we said that the corners were cut off, So we're doing like a tiny slant, comes straight across. Another tiny slant, and then you're going to come down to meet the bottom part of the tag. If anything kind of looks funny, you can always go back over it. Again, nobody is going to see like that outline. So if it was too small and you want to make it bigger, just do another line over it. I'm going to wait just a minute, make sure I'm not going too fast for y'all. Okay, now this is the part that I was talking about. As you can see, this orange is another level than the cookie. So if you put that white icing in, you're going to see that dip down, which is obviously not ideal. So I kind of just haphazardly put some white in there. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect. But what I want is for this to then be level with the orange. And I don't even fill like the whole cookie. If I have like a couple holes, it doesn't matter, because this is enough icing to make sure it doesn't dip down. Okay? So just make sure it's kind of the same height as that orange. Okay, and then that's going to actually give us sort of that more level white thin flooding. Okay. I'm just kind of waiting for this to dry just a little bit. But I don't know, I wait like maybe a minute, and then I'm like, okay, it's good. We're going to take our thin white icing. The thin white. And we're just going to go all onto that rectangle over the orange. Yep, you're going completely over the orange and the white. If you feel like, I'm just kind of looking at this now, if you feel like this part over here needs a second outline because it might overflow, then go ahead and outline that. You just want to make sure it's not going to fall off over that outline. Alright, so now I've got my thin white, and I'm going completely inside. All on top of the icing that's underneath. Okay, you can use your toothpick. It's got red icing on it, but it's all dried up, so should be fine. I'm going to kind of cover some of the mistakes that I had in that outline. But now, as you can see, it should be pretty level. The top part should be the same level as the bottom. This is what we want. Concentrating. Alright. I gotta look at this side, I can't see this side. Typically I'm like right over my cookie so I can see it completely from the top down. Okay, cool. While we're here working on this one, we're going to do the stem. Okay, so the stem is the, let me see, oh, I think it's the light brown. Yeah, it's the light brown. So it's the one that you did the wooden boards with on the apple cookie. Okay. So what we're looking to do is create a circle that just kind of covers our mistake, not really mistake, but it covers the part in the middle where all of this icing bunched up. So we're gonna outline a circle first to cover that part, okay? And then since this is a medium consistency, you're gonna outline and then you're just gonna go ahead and flood. Okay, we're not worrying about the little spiral part. We're just gonna do the circle and the flooding. Kind of hard to draw a circle on your own. I always say start small because you can always make it bigger. So I kind of start with sort of like a small circle. And then you can keep adding it until you feel good with that size of the stem. I'm debating if I want to make it bigger. The more icing I keep adding, the bigger it's going to get. Okay. And again, we're going to let it dry. It's a lot of steps. This is definitely an advanced class. Takes a little bit more time. All right. Sorry, I know I just keep moving, making you move it, grab it, but let's move it over without messing it up. Okay. Now I'm thinking apples. Okay, we're gonna do the little bases, the base coat. We have two extra layers, kind of like I had explained. So the three that are on top, right, those are the last layer that we're gonna do. But then you see you've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 7 apples underneath. So you obviously know that wherever there's a scallop, you know, a bump on the edge of the cookie, that's going to be an apple. And then so you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 on the outside, and then you can do like 3 in the middle, or 2. I might have 1 underneath there that I can't tell, but the beauty with having the red underneath is you don't necessarily have to like fill every single crevice if you don't want to. So we're gonna need to grab our 1 red, our thick red, the one that has the line. All right, and obviously we've already been using it. I'm going to... Okay, so just little tiny circles. We're going to outline first. Outline, outline. If you don't feel confident, you can watch me first. And I'm leaving a little bit of room for like the stem. Just picture an apple. How do you want your apples to look? You want them to be like long, like a Red Delicious one? Do you want them to be kind of small and plump? This top one here, the stem and the leaf are going to be on the top, so you know that that part is the top of it. Okay. Does not have to be perfect. All right. So now I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I think I'm gonna do 3 on the bottom. Yeah, in the middle, sorry. 3 on the bottom layer. And these ones are not really as like you can't, they're not as visual, like, what am I trying to say? They're not as obvious, like you're not going to really see them, but it is going to provide that cushion to make the 3 on top look like they're actually on top. So if you just were like, I don't want to put anything there, then you wouldn't get that 2-dimension where you kind of like see these apples on top. So that's why we're doing it. It feels like a lot of steps, but it does make it look better. And then as you can see, I've got 8 apples, some gaps where the red is underneath, but that obviously doesn't matter because it still looks like there are apples underneath and not the cookie underneath. Alright, this is the tricky part. You remember the alternating, right? So, when I did this cookie, this exact cookie right here, it was like, I think I did alternating, and then I realized that it wasn't completely like perfect, that I couldn't alternate, so then I ended up doing like 3 and then having to go. Basically, long story short, you want to do each single circle and then like do the next one without like touching the other one. Okay, so like again, if you're thinking of, okay, I want this one to completely dry before I put flood the other one. That way you get that definition. So I'm going to do these 2, the one on the left bottom, one on the top part on the middle, and then I might come over here and do like this one over here. Sounds complicated. I'm not really doing the best of explaining it, but you just don't want to like flood each one and then it loses its definition. Alright, so we're dropping in that icing. I'm doing that one. Yeah. Like I said, it does not matter. Because in the end, they're all going to get flooded. Even if it just takes a little bit more time. As long as we wait a couple minutes in between, we're good. Okay, so there I have 3 apples that are flooded with no other apples touching them that are also flooded. Does that make sense? So like I said, you gotta wait for this to dry a little bit. However, if we're looking at this cookie, we know that we still have some details to do on the wooden basket part. And we can tell, I mean, don't touch it, I'm going to touch mine, but yep, we can tell that this is dry enough that we could go ahead and add some details and it would be totally fine. So while we're like waiting for these little guys to dry, we can go ahead and add the 2 dark brown lines that go straight across, one on the top, one near the bottom. Alright, so you see that? That's what we're going to do. So we want to grab our dark brown, so not the one that's black, but the dark brown. This is a thick one. Okay, this color. And we're going to cut a small hole. Remember, not too big. You're doing only details with these, so you really don't want too big of a hole. You can always make it smaller, cut it smaller, and then make it bigger as you go. Alright. I like to test it first on a napkin, just to make sure that it is the width that I want and that it's coming out okay. There we go. So it was a little watery, but now it's better. So sometimes if you didn't massage it, it'll be a little bit more watery. just kind of let out a little bit more until you get to that kind of thicker consistency, okay? All right, so somewhere at the top, if you can see for a minute here, see how I kind of like let this line kind of like go sort of like around the brown part? I don't know if you can see that. But if I just have it right on top, it kind of lacks that 2-dimension. And so if I kind of try to like wrap it around, like get real close to that cookie and then across, it kind of makes it look a little bit curved. So somewhere near the top, you let that icing hug as much of the brown as possible. You're coming straight across. Mine was definitely not a straight line. It's so hard when I have my phone like right above it. Okay, so now the second line, near the bottom, kind of wrapping that light brown. There we go. 2 lines. Okay. So the good news is, I think that those 3 red apples are dry enough that we can do a couple more. Okay. This is where last time I was like, oh, that one is touching that one. What I might do, since I can't even see in the finished cookie, you can't even really see this middle bottom one. I'm not even going to worry about keeping the definition between these. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the middle one first. We're gonna flood this with the red. All right, I'm gonna pause. Let's see. I'm definitely gonna do this one over here on the right, because that one is not touching the middle. This is so silly. You know, you never think until you do this that you're like, you have to literally like think about which one to do next. That does not happen with beginner cookies at all. Okay, I'm gonna do the one on the top left. It is touching that middle one, but I know I'm gonna put an apple on top of it, so I'm not really worried about that because it's gonna be hidden like anyway. And then we pause and we wait for it to dry a little bit. However, the one last part on the bucket, we can do that. And that is the little handle. So we have a semicircle from the top of the basket down to kind of like the middle, or almost the middle. Okay, and then we put like, I put a little thicker part right here, because you know how like a lot of wooden baskets, they kind of have this little handle there. That's kind of what I was going for. So, alright, I'm going to do my light brown, the same one that I did the wooden basket in. Alright, just remember you've got one chance to do this. I'm not trying to put pressure on you, but you have one chance to do this, and you can't, if you mess up, you can't really wipe it off. So just be, you know, very like meticulous and mindful of what you're doing. I'm going to start over on the leftmost board. I'm going to come down almost halfway, and then I'm going to come up to the right, outermost wooden board. Okay. Little hand-eye coordination. Speaking of which, I joined a flag football team, like an all-girls flag football. It's just for fun. However, I don't have very good hand-eye coordination with it, and I'm like, what in the world? I do hand-eye coordination stuff like a lot. How come I can't, you know, pull a flag down or catch a ball? Anyway, doesn't make any sense to me, but I'm getting better. I've only ever done it twice, like practiced twice, so hopefully by the end of it, I'll be doing a lot better. Okay, now we can add that little handle. Just a little thicker than that line. So you don't want it the same width because then it won't look like a handle. And when it dries, it looks a lot better. Now I will say that if I'm doing a custom order, I would have this be completely thick. So we're doing a medium consistency, which is fine, but typically I would do a thicker one. Okay, now we know that these apples are dry enough that we can do these two remaining ones. Finally. Okay. So, last one's and then it's like, well, they're not even the last ones because then we have 3 more on top, but we're not going to think about that. So, finish flooding these last apples. And then let it dry because you've got the 3 apples on top. However, let's come back to this cookie. Okay? Because we've got a lot of other stuff to do. So I'm going to move it up. We'll let that dry. Then we'll add the other apples. Okay. Still doing all right. Hopefully. Grab your door. Grab the door. Okay. That white is dry enough. We can go ahead and add these little rectangles that are part of the door. I'm going to try to make this as simple as possible. Hopefully it'll be not too complicated because a lot of times when I've done the door, my rectangles are completely like asymmetrical, like not symmetrical at all. So what I learned is if I do the doorknob first, that increases my chances to get better looking rectangle lines in the door. Okay, so imagine about halfway at the cookie, so halfway at the door, we're just gonna draw a little circle. You can draw a circle first, and then with the same one, kind of drop in some icing. This is the thick white. However, it's thin enough that we can do that doorknob. I've got some little like mountains sticking up, so I'm gonna press them down a little. There we go. Sometimes that happens if you just press it down, it'll go back into the icing. Okay, then here we go. All right. At the top part of the doorknob, you're going to do a line, maybe about a little over 1 centimeter, and then space and do another line the same exact distance. Then at the bottom of the knob, you're going to do the same thing, a line, and then space and a line. So what do I mean by that? I will show you. Here we go. to go a line. And I'm kind of looking to make sure everything's going to be as symmetrical as possible. Okay. So you have 2 lines straight across. Okay, and then right under the knob, you do the same thing. You're just mirroring that same distance line, about the same distance line. So then from here, should be a little bit easier to now make them look a little bit more symmetrical. So we're going to draw a straight line up, go over the same amount, straight line down. We're going to do that for every single one. Line down. This bottom one is going to meet the pumpkin. You're going to stop, come down till you meet the pumpkin and stop. That's only for that bottom left one. Okay. So we come straight up. Follow the edge of that cookie. Stop just before you get to the top. Come across, kind of look at it. Is it the same distance? And then straight down. I'm not gonna lie, this is challenging. I like to use my toothpick if I feel like the lines look like too separated. I kind of just push it to kind of like mold into the other line. Whew, stressful. Jeez. 1 down, 3 to go. All right. Same thing, straight up and across and down, rectangle. Okay, that one was not that bad. All right, same thing on the bottom. Here we go. Coming down on this left side to meet the pumpkin. Once I meet it, I stop. Using my toothpick if I'm wanting it to look perfect, but you know I am. Get back on there. There we go. Last one for me. Coming down. And then just before I hit the bottom, gonna come straight across. Right, straight down. So for mine, definitely not perfect. However, it is incredibly hard. If you're taking the class, you just experienced it. It is very, very hard to make that perfect. But, like, obviously I'm looking at it and I'm like, oh, dang it, these two are shorter than those two. But, honestly, at the end of the day, I'm happy with that. Okay. So, moving on. We want to do the pumpkins. Definition of the pumpkins. So we go back to our thick orange that we haven't used in a little while. The one that has a 1 on it. Okay. Kind of wipe off the tip a little bit. It likes to kind of crust over when it's exposed to the oxygen for a little bit. As you can see on the finished left side, we are just creating those defined segments. Okay. I like to start with the middle section first. So I draw an oval in the middle of each one. However, the one on the left, that second bump on the bottom is the middle section. Okay, so just keep that in mind. But the little one, I'm going to start at the bottom, and then I'm going to come up, I'm going to draw a little oval. Once I'm at the top, come back down and meet the other line. Same thing on the left. This one looks a little funny right now because I haven't finished the right one. Okay, but then go ahead and just outline the rest of the pumpkin. Alright, so I've got my right one. Whew. The harder it is, the more concentrated and stressful it is. Okay, so that's it for the outline of the pumpkin. I'll wait for those who are taking the class to catch up a little bit if needed. Alright. Next thing, once you finish that, you're going to grab your beige icing. Alright, massage it if you haven't already done that, just because it was made a few days ago, so you want to make sure it's the right consistency. This is also going to be a medium consistency, okay? So, again, that means that you can outline and you can flood with this. So we're going to make the sign. I liked mine to be a little bit kind of cockeyed. See that? So kind of did like a diagonal rectangle. We want it to be kind of in the middle of the two rectangles that you did on the door. Alright? So like if you imagine a door, you've got a little nail on the top. We're going to draw that string later. And then sort of right in the middle, we're going to have this wooden sign. You can make it straight or you can make it diagonal. Don't cut a big hole, cut a small one like you're doing an outline, like we did at the beginning. Okay, and then kind of look at it, see, okay, I want it to sort of start here. So, I'm gonna do that. And I can make it bigger if I want to. Once you have the outline, you can just go ahead and right away flood it. Okay. Make sure it's enough icing on it that it's like a pillow right on top of the other layer. Nice and fluffy. I take my toothpick and I mold it to be a little bit more pointy, to look a little bit more like I want it to look like. You can definitely manipulate it a little bit more when it's a medium consistency. Okay, but it's obviously not going to be perfect, and that's okay too. Alright. So just like I talked about the little nail and then the little string, we're going to do our white that has a 1 on it. Okay, and we're just going to right on top put a little dot, tiny dot, to kind of act like the nail or whatever is kind of holding up that sign. Then our dark brown should have a tiny hole. We've already used it, okay? So then we just go and add like a little line. If yours is slanted like mine, if yours looks exactly like mine, your string on the left side is going to be longer than the one on the right. Does that make sense? Just like if you had like a regular sign on a door, if it's leaning that way, then that means that that string is longer. So we're going to make it kind of look like it's sort of wrapped around that hook or that little nail. So kind of like come around it. And then to the other side. Okay. So the next thing, we're actually going to probably finish this cookie. Thank goodness. It's like, what, 2 hours in, we haven't even finished a cookie. It's like, are you kidding me? That's how it is, I'm telling you. We're going to take our green. This is a thick icing, okay? We're going to use this for these little green strings that are on the pumpkin, okay? You can follow exactly my design, or you can just do whatever you want to do. I'm going to move it down so you can see it. So I had like 3 on the right pumpkin, 2 on the left, and we're cutting a very, very tiny hole. Tiny, tiny hole. A little smaller than you would with the outline, okay? And we spiral, we kind of loop and squiggle or do whatever you want. But I came over, I'm gonna actually squeeze this out a little bit, test it, make sure it's good. Okay, it's good. So I came over to the top and I first went up and then I looped and then I came down and looped. And I had a second one, I looped, and then the like crazier it looks, the better, I think, because these are supposed to be like vines. And as you know, vines are not perfect. We have a bunch of vines in our backyard right now, and they are crazy. They're, I think they're called like butterfly vines. Anyway, the flowers on them are amazing, and the butterflies are, pollinating the flowers. But they're like, I've never seen flowers that look that's awesome. And the vines, they just grow like crazy. So that's what we're going for, just kind of like these vines looking things. I followed exactly what I did on this one. You can add more, or you know, you can do your own thing, whatever you want to do. All right. So, the tricky part. And that is the writing. So, I just realized I didn't even have my parchment paper down here. But parchment paper is good if you want to practice a little bit. So before we go ahead and write on it, I like to just kind of practice on my parchment paper first. This is going to be with the black. Okay. We are going to do a tiny, it's actually kind of like a dark brown black kind of color. It's not really black black. I did that on purpose to be kind of more in line with like fall. But we're going to do just a tiny bit off, because if you think about like when you write, you want it to be as thin as like a fine tip pen, and I always go smaller first, and if I want to make it bigger I can. But think of like a fine tip pen and kind of imitate that, right? So I'm going to go ahead and practice. Yeah, there we go. So I cut it, and I liked the amount that I cut it. So that's always good. Now, you can write fall in cursive, capital letters, however you would normally write it, or you could write something else if you want. But I did cursive, so I'm just going to practice over here. writing fall in cursive. So you can do whatever you want. The goal is you want it to feel good about how it looks here, so that when you add it on the cookie, it's about the same. So if you practice on your parchment paper and then you add it, hopefully you like the way it looks. Because once it's on there, you can't really wipe it off, right? Whew, this is the stressful part. This is the time. This is getting real. You only have one chance. So, you know, just kind of trust yourself. Trust that even if it looks horrible, like, if you could still see the word fall, great. If you are, like, wanting it to be perfect and you're an advanced kind of cookie artist, you can get one of those projectors, which would, like literally put the image, the writing on it, and you would just trace it, which does feel a little bit like cheating. But that would be like, it would make it look perfect, okay? Again, this is the finished product of what we're going for, or what I chose to do. So, here we go. Lots of hand-eye coordination here. I'm going to wipe the tip a little. There we go. Stay on the sign. Okay. It says fall, so I'm happy. The writing is very, very tricky. So, okay. So, guess what? We have finished our first cookie 2 hours later. Oh my goodness. It's crazy. It's crazy. But that's kind of what it takes. So this one is our first one that's completed. And the little door with the pumpkins and the fall sign. So I hope that if you're taking this class, you feel accomplished, that your first one is done. Okay, so I'm going to set this one aside since this one is done. Put it over there. All right. Now we can bring our apple one back. We didn't forget that we have to add those 3 apples, right? Okay. 3 apples. And for the sake of time, as I know we're kind of nearing the end here, I am going to make the 3 not touching each other so that I can go ahead and flood them right away. Does that make sense? So these 2 up here are touching each other. I'm not going to do that this time. But see how this one on the right, I kind of made it look like an apple, like a Red Delicious apple? I'm going to try for that as well. So just pick, 3 spots wherever you want. And then go ahead and outline how you want that cookie to, or that apple to look. Kind of looks like a tooth. And then I like to go in and add that icing, just like we did with that white tag, so that it's not dipping in places, it's completely flat. So there's one. Let me go here. There's 2. Make sure that that outline is going to be fully encasing the thin icing inside. Sometimes I have to double outline. Does that look like an apple? Now I keep seeing teeth. I keep seeing little tooth. Whatever, okay. And I'm going to go over here. A bucket of apples. Alright, once you have the outline, you're going to flood it. Flood. We're also about to finish this one. So you can flood each one because they're not touching. Maybe take the toothpick if you need. Ooh, don't overflow. Sometimes that happens. Even though I've been doing this for a while. Sometimes it still overflows on me. And that typically is if I didn't let it dry long enough, which might be the case, but looks like it's gonna stay in there. Okay. So, we are going to, like I said, finish this cookie, which means that we're gonna add the little stems with our thick, dark brown, okay? Thick, dark brown. All right. And each apple, I'm going to literally draw a little line, like the stem, anywhere you want. Little stem. Where I want that one to be, up here. Just a little line. And any of the ones you can see underneath, you can also give them a little stem if you want. If you can see it, you want to do that, go for it. Okay. All right, now you're going to take this green, okay? You want to draw little tiny leaves, okay? So that means if you've done a class with me before, you know how to make leaves. I'm just going to explain it real quick though. You want to lay your bag, so you want the seam of the bag to be facing you right down the middle. There's a seam, you want it to face you right down the middle. You want to push this icing back so that you have a flat tip. That way when you go to cut it, you're going to have the same exact cut on the front and the back. Okay? If it has air in it and you cut it, it's not going to be symmetrical. So you just want to make sure it's flat. We want tiny leaves. I kind of can't stress this enough. If you cut a lot, you're going to get big leaves. So from the outer part to the seam, we're going to cut a little diagonal line from the outer part to the seam, tiny. And then you're going to do the same thing. I typically have to rotate it. Same thing on the other side, from the seam to the outer part. So you have a pointy. Oop, focus, there we go. Okay. And then, if you want to practice on your parchment paper, you can. You want to lay your wrist flat so that you can see your fingernails. And then that seam is facing you. If you squeeze and pull, you should get these tiny leaves. The more you squeeze, like this first one, the bigger your leaf. So if you just go squeeze and pull, squeeze and pull, squeeze and pull, you'll get these tiny little leaves, and that's what we're looking for. And so, near the stem, you're going to give it a leaf. You're going to go tiny leaf. Squeeze and pull. Pull straight out. So you're not up like this. You want to see your fingernails, see that seam. You're squeezing and pulling straight out to the side. It's okay if the leaves go off the cookie. This top one here, though, is going to be on the cookie. That's the only one. Well, on the outer part. Leaves are so much fun. They're my favorite. I love the leaves. I'm rotating the cookie so that I keep it on my right side. Okay. There we go. Yay! Our second cookie is done. If you've gotten to this point, this one is done. They look so cute. I love the little leaves. Those are my favorite. Okay, moving right along. Alright, hopefully you are done with this and I can take it away. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always pause if I'm going too fast. Probably should have said that in the beginning, but you all know you can do that. So, okay. On to the pumpkin. I'm thinking, do we want to do I want to do this? Yeah, let's do it. I was thinking, we have not even touched the truck in like an hour. Isn't that crazy? It's so crazy. Okay. Alright, so what I'm going to do with the stem is I'm going to take my thick dark brown and I'm going to spiral. So I'm going to start in the middle and then just kind of spiral out a couple of times till I get to the outer edge. Okay? So spiral out. Well, that was more like a few times. That was way more than I was planning. I think I said a couple times. That was like 5 times. So we're spiraling out. Cool. Guess what? The tag. Yes. I did the exact same writing that I did on the sign of the door. I just did the same thing because if I already did it, then it makes sense to do it again because it increases my chances for it to actually be good. So you can face it any direction you want. Like this one up here, I put it on the left. This one over here, I'm going to do it on the right side. I'm going to write it that way. Okay. So the darker brown, that almost looks like black. Okay, the writing. And you have a little bit more room here. So if you're feeling like really confident, you could even probably say like more than one word. You could do like fall is here or hello fall. I don't know. That's up to you. I could do hello fall, but I'm just going to do fall because it's easier. But you have some more room, so it doesn't feel as cramped if you wanted to do something with a little bit more writing. But like I said, I'm just going to do pretty much the same thing that I did on the door. Writing takes so much concentration. If you're taking the class, you understand. Right. You feel my pain, but then when it's done, you're like, oh, I can breathe now. Like you hold your breath while you're doing it, and then you're like done, you're like, okay, breathe. Try not to hold your breath though, but I sometimes do that. And then I'm like, oh my gosh, I haven't taken a breath. I sometimes take my toothpick and just kind of manipulate it a little bit. There's only so much of it manipulating that you can do, but overall I feel really happy with that. So I'm good with that. All right. Remember the beige that we had, the little beige one? We're gonna do a little burlap string here. Okay. Almost done, y'all. Stay with me. If you need to go, if you're taking the class right now, if you need to go, you can, and then come back to the YouTube video later. That's totally fine. Ooh, I even like this one better than that one. Yeah. Okay. So the burlap, notice how on this one I didn't do like perfect circles. I kind of like sort of weaved out, weaved in kind of thing, because that's kind of how burlap string is. Like if you've seen, it's kind of twisty, kind of like funky, so that's kind of what we're going for. I'm gonna start over here near the tag. That's where my bow is gonna be, but I'm just gonna start just kind of adding some little imperfect kind of crisscross lines. Now, this is my fault, but it's gonna kind of mesh together. Yeah, that totally is my fault. So, what I'm going to do to fix that right now is I am going to go back over it with the Stirk one as well. And sometimes that does happen. If you don't like the way this looks, then don't do it. And then I'm going to come back. Okay, I'm going to let that dry before I add the bow, and you'll see why, but because if I add it, then the bow's just going to mesh into that, so I'm going to let that dry. Alright, we're going to go to the truck finally. Here we go. Okay, there's a lot that needs to be done on this. We need to make the pumpkins. I don't have a finished product, but I do have a picture of what I'm looking at. So we have 3 pumpkins, okay? We're going to use our thick orange to outline the pumpkins. The pumpkins are going to be right here. We're going to have 1, 2, and 3. This bump right up here is going to be a leaf, and this one down here is going to be a mirror. And same with this. So these 2 right here, these 2 bumps are going to be white. So I know I just told you to get your orange, but actually get your white. I want to do those first just so that the pumpkins are not going like on top of it. So the one white, you're going to outline first, and then just go ahead and fill it with the white. Okay. And then we're going to come in here and we're going to do the same thing. I kind of went over the cookie, like, because I wanted it to be the same size as that. And this cutter is just kind of funny. It, like, the right side is bigger than the left mirror for whatever reason. Like, the manufacturer made it that way. I don't know. Okay. So it's all kind of starting to come together. We have the mirrors. Now we're going to do the pumpkins. In the picture, I did do the pumpkins as separate sections. Okay. So first thing I did, if you want to watch me, I don't want to cover the whole window, but these are supposed to look like they're kind of like in the bed of the truck. So you do kind of like a cut off pumpkin. So draw like a circle like that. Okay, and then you also want to outline that middle section right there. Now it looks like a pumpkin. Then you have one in the middle. So again, you don't want the full circle, you want to kind of cut it off to make it look like it's sort of in the bed of the truck. Okay, and then our last one over here. Okay, I'm happy with that so far. Okay. Now you know where we're going with this. Okay. We're going to do alternating. So we're going to do flood this one, don't flood that. Flood this, don't flood that. Flood this, don't flood that. Okay, if you want to watch me, you can. Actually, let me start over here on the right. So I'm going to flood. I'm not using my toothpick because it's so tiny. And then I'm going to skip. Then I'm going to flood. Then I'm going to skip. We'll flood this middle one. Skip. Flood. Skip. Flood. Okay, so it should look like that when you're done. We let that dry. But we do know that we can come and do these stems and the leaves. We definitely can do that. Okay, so while we're waiting for it to dry, we're going to give these guys some little stems. Just like a pumpkin. And then we can also do the leaves while we're waiting for the orange to dry. So, this one on the right has, like, this is going to be a leaf. So, we can put a leaf here, or we could make it have like a long leaf, if we want. Or you can transfer, this is what I think I'm going to do. You can transfer this into another bag, and you can do like 3 leaves, transfer this into another bag, recut it, and do this, the little spirals again like you did on the door. Does that make sense? So I think that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do like little leaves, but bigger than the apples. So if you squeeze a little bit more, you're going to get bigger leaves. Okay? Yeah. Once you have 3 leaves, the orange is not dry yet. Okay. So, since we're going to put this in another bag, we're going to go ahead and cut this bigger, the same way with the leaves, just bigger, so that we can add the leaf to the pumpkin. Okay? So I'm doing the same diagonal cuts, but they're just a little, it's going to be a little bit bigger because now I'm working with a bigger pumpkin. Okay? And you can add the leaves wherever you want. I am going to go right, and so I keep squeezing and pull, squeeze and pull, squeeze until you feel like you like that width of the leaf, and then pull it out. Man, I am so sorry. That is the only thing I regret is I made the beige too thin. So that, I am so sorry for that. So now I'm trying to think. Thinking, do I want to add the bow? Yeah, I want to add the bow. Okay. So once you have the leaves, then the only thing we have to add is the bow. So think like two bunny ears, bunny rabbit ears, and then add the little string from the bow. Okay. We're just gonna do one. So I'm gonna come right kind of here. Bunny ear, and it's okay if it's overlapping. Yep. Sometimes I like to add a little dot to the middle. So for the sake of the class, obviously it's like, okay, it is what it is. But obviously this is kind of like a teaching moment. So if you are going to do like, let's say you did this cookie for like an order, or you wanted to do them, you know, again, you would want to make sure that this is thicker, the burlap string. So even though it was great, like for this sign, it was easy, then it's like, So for now, I think I'm going to kind of add a little bit of, add another, so then it looks a little bit less than, okay, I'm happy with that. That looks better. Cool. So yeah, sorry about that, but that would be what you want to do to fix it. Sometimes I'll take a thicker one and go over it. Okay, so this third one is done. Yay! 3 down. And we're almost done. And I know we're kind of over time right now, so. Wow, you don't really like think like how long it takes to actually do these cookies, right? Until you do them and you're like, oh goodness, now I know. Okay, so we want to finish this pumpkin. Go ahead and flood the rest. These two. Okay, you're gonna see that definition a little bit, which is what we want. That makes it look more like a pumpkin. And when it dries, you're gonna see that even more. It's gonna look really cool. All right. Now, remember how I said you're gonna take this green, put it in another bag? I'm going to snip off a bigger hole so that it's easy for me when I go to transfer this. And you can do this with any thick icing that you feel like you want to make it smaller. You're going to stick it inside the new bag, push it all the way down to the bottom so that it's like this, okay? And then just squeeze it all out so that you see that icing come into the new bag. Okay. Like that. You can tie it if you want, or just leave it as is. I like to tie it. All right. Oops, sorry. There we go. All right, tiny, tiny hole. Tiny, tiny. Kind of like you did for the writing. What's gonna happen? We're gonna spiral. We're gonna do some little spirals. So just like the little vines, wherever you think looks best. We definitely want to put some over here on the right side. Okay, I'm going to loop it just like that. Cute. This is so cute. I'm going to have to flip it. So just kind of, just like we did on the one with the door. Do it till you think it looks good to you. Okay. I think I'm about done. I don't want to like overdo it. Yeah, that's good. There you go. All right. I'm gonna just kind of tell you a couple of things that you can do. So this is the last step. We have 3 things that we can do. However, I'm not going to necessarily do all of them with you. The white, that's supposed to be like the window, once that dries a little bit longer, like tomorrow, what you can do is take your marker and like draw like little dashes. Here, let me try mine, see if it's dry enough. Yeah, it is actually. You just don't press too hard on it because it might poke through. So it kind of makes it look like it's got like a glare, like a glass, right? And it surprisingly is dry enough, so that's awesome. It's not going to be dry enough on these side mirrors though, okay? But that just kind of, I do that to kind of make it look like a glass, okay? And then if you want, when it's dry, you can also write. I'm not going to do it now because I know that this one is going to puncture it. But in like, tomorrow or 12 hours or whatever, you can write like fall or 2019 or whatever. But if you wanted to do something now, you can definitely do it with the icing. If that hole is small enough, I can always come over here and do like 2019. It's just very, very tiny. So if you don't feel confident to do that, you don't have to, or you can wait till tomorrow. You can put a heart there. You can do, anything. It's your license plate. Do whatever you want. But then the last thing is going to be the silver. Okay, I'm going to try it first because I want to know, is this icing dry enough for me to then go and put like a paintbrush on it? All right, but I am going to show you, and then if it's not, I'm going to leave you to do that next time. So when you have this edible silver, it's edible. It doesn't really look like it, but you only want to put, I'm using vodka right here. You want to put just a couple of drops. I did 3 drops. If you have water, then you'll do water. All right, and then we're going to mix it up once I find my paintbrush. And it is actually pretty thick. So I might even add a little bit more. Yeah, it's pretty thick. So you want it to get to be like a paste. So I'm gonna add a couple more drops. I just don't want to add too much. And then it's like watery. So I add it till it's kind of like a watercolor paint. And I think I did give you guys quite a bit of silver. So you might have to add a little bit more water or vodka. Something to note is that the silver dries very quickly. So you have to kind of keep like mixing it. All right, let's see if it's gonna work. Yeah, actually it does. So just be careful, like lightly kind of just paint it on. And you might have to do a couple of coats here, okay? It's very weird, the silver, very strange. If you use water, I've done that before. It's not like that much of a difference. It just sometimes like separates a little bit more. But most of the time I go ahead and I add like another coat. Like once this dries, I'll add another coat. But that's like about as much as I can do right now without it just kind of coming up again. So yeah, you can add another coat later. Keep the top on it though if you are going to add another coat so that that oxygen doesn't mess with it funny. Okay, I'm going to flip it back over to me. Okay. So, wow. 4 cookies took 2.5 hours. I hope that you guys had fun. I hope that it was a lot to learn and not too stressful. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to send the promo codes to the door prize winners. And as always, thank you so much. Of course, I always make mistakes during the class. Y'all are just so gracious and very understanding, and just it's always such a pleasure, and I have so much fun. So I just want to say thank you and have a good night. Let me know if you have any questions. You can message me on Facebook, Instagram, or email. I will respond as quickly as I can, and if you have any questions about anything, I'm all ears. I would love to help. All right, see y'all next time. Bye.